For over 100 years, McKennan Park has offered Sioux Falls a place of beauty and open spaces. A place that is open to whoever wishes to stroll beneath the trees or smell the blooms of the gardens. A place of history that has become a museum of all the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of the people who first called this area home.
Well, the history of McKennan Park really is the history of Sioux Falls.
The park was developed at a time when Americans were moving west, transforming an entire region, encouraged by the potential to better their own lives. Today, those same desires still exist in the McKennan Park Historic District.
It's the real world. It's the way the real world is, a lot of variety and diversity.
It just has a nice sense of community, and it has to do with the park.
Open prairie was the reason people rushed to Dakota Territory. Sioux Falls was founded in 1856, but it wasn't until the Dakota land boom 10 years later when Sioux Falls began to draw in hundreds of settlers.
All these people are seeing the potential that Sioux Falls has, and this area of Dakota has. It's a great place to settle, you can bring people, and it's a great place to make some money as well.
Some came seeking freedom, land of their own, and opportunities they couldn't find back home, while others found in Dakota a place to change themselves, become someone else, to start over.
Horace Greeley, I think, said, "Go west, young man, go west and grow up with the country." And that's what a lot of these people were doing. They were coming out from the east. They'd grown up in New York and Vermont and New England, and now wanted to set their course in life.
By 1890, more than 10,000 people were setting their course in Sioux Falls. Land speculation was the way to wealth, and people bought land, mortgaged land, sold land, and bought land again in a never-ending push for prosperity. One of the many people who helped change the land was Melvin Grigsby. Well known for his military accomplishments during the Civil War, Grigsby arrived in Sioux Falls in 1872 to establish a law practice.
He came out here, he was a lawyer, and just like everyone, he makes his mark on the city.
Land speculation and land development was one of the driving factors in the new village. People like Edwin Sherman, E.A. Sherman, was a land developer. Helen McKennan and her brother Artemus Gale were land developers. They bought these large tracts of land, which in many cases had never even seen the plow. They'd only seen the buffalo and the prairie birds. But they bought these large tracts of land with the hopes of developing it into lots to sell off to make money.
This is a time period where Sioux Falls is growing, and it's starting to grow outward. So much of it had been concentrated in the downtown area and up in the Cathedral District, and now it's moving to the south.
Development of the area south of downtown started in 1883 with the platting of the Boulevard Addition. An advertisement called the addition the coming fashionable residence quarter, and it was claimed to be one of the pleasantest residence localities in the metropolis of southern Dakota.
During that time when that was replatted, Colonel Grigsby actually built a house at 323 Boulevard Street, and that was actually on the northwest corner of McKennan Park. That was one of the first residences actually in the Boulevard Addition.
But progress was slow to come to the new addition.
It was the country, and it took a while to get out there from downtown. At least a few of the homes, the small bungalows, were summer houses. And it's really through the foresight of Helen McKennan, who came to the district, and she bought a house that had been owned by Melvin Grigsby right on the corner of 2nd Avenue and the Boulevard, that the district that we know today came to be.
Helen McKennan originally came to Sioux Falls in 1874, but returned to Wisconsin to marry Dr. William McKennan. In the early 1890s, after the death of her husband, Mrs. McKennan returned and would eventually become one of the wealthiest residents in Sioux Falls. She had extensive land holdings throughout the area, including half interest in the new Boulevard addition.
Well, I think Helen McKennan, she had to be a woman a little bit ahead of her time. But Dakota was a place that you could do that. It was a place where all you needed was a little bit of an idea and maybe some backing, and you could make something of yourself out here. And it's a case where you have a lot of the social constraints back east. She comes out to Dakota a little bit more of a free spirit in the area here. And it was a place where even if you were single and you were a single woman and you were trying to make it, you had opportunity here. There were things that you could do and you could make a name for yourself.
A staunch member of the Congregational Church, Mrs. McKennan had a great standing within the community. She was one of the city's biggest philanthropists and would eventually donate $25,000 to start a hospital that would, quote, be different, attending to not only patients' physical needs, but their spiritual and emotional needs as well. She also allowed the Minnehaha Country Club to build a 9-hole golf course on 40 acres of her land.
America was in a boom time, and we were spreading out. If you wanted, it's the first suburban sprawl.
While early pioneers were developing the plains, they missed the majestic trees, the oaks and maples that shaded their homes back east, places where parks were part of everyday life.
The only park was an informal one at the falls. It was called Seney Island. And a lot of people thought maybe that should be a park. But Seney Island in the falls was the location of a tremendous amount of industrial development. And it very quickly took on a character of railroad switching yards, dumping grounds, garbage refuse, and really wasn't very conducive to a park. But these businessmen all knew the city should have a park.
And we're realizing that if we have unregulated expansion in areas, that we're going to lose some of our natural beauty and we're going to lose some true treasures in our country. So we have the national park movement with Teddy Roosevelt going on at the same time.
E.A. Sherman was the one that really came forward and said, we're going to start a system of parks. Sherman remembered his boyhood days, and he reminisced many times about the enjoyment of walking the hills of his native land and enjoying the trees and the sky and the fresh air. And once he grew older, he realized how important this was to people's enjoyment.
Helen McKennan had a vision, and she wanted a place where families could enjoy themselves. And she would look out to the south of her home, and there was a beautiful treed area. It was the prairie. It was a great place to be. So she decided that there needed to be a park there.
In 1906, when she realized that her life was reaching an end, she determined that she wanted to will her house and the 20 acres of McKennan Park to the city. She contacted the only man that realized how important parks would be, and that was E.A. Sherman. And between the two of them, they devised her will that would donate to the city both her house and the 20 acres that would become McKennan Park.
She had a bit of a stipulation, and she had a vision for what the park would be. And I want to actually quote her words here, that she wanted it to be a place where mothers and their children could come and enjoy the fresh air, the sunshine, and the cooling shade. I want it to be a place of rest where the Sabbath may be respected and where order and temperance may prevail.
She wanted a place where people could come, particularly young mothers with their children and young babies, and be able to walk out in the open in the fresh air and the clear skies and see the beauty of the park and of nature, and to enjoy that aspects of life. So you can just imagine what kind of person Helen McKennan was.
Helen Gale McKennan died on September 29, 1906. That same day, the city was deeded the 20 acres of the Boulevard addition with the conditions that the land must be used as a public park. Only the house and a sufficient amount of land around it were to be sold. The money acquired from the sale was to be used to improve the remaining park land. She also requested that liquor be prohibited within the park.
She came here, she enjoyed her time in Sioux Falls, she wanted to give back to the community at the time of her death.
E.A. Sherman saw to the initial development of the park, which Sherman said had natural advantages in the scenery that couldn't be surpassed. At the dedication of the park in 1908, Sherman described the view from the park as a sweep of horizon meets the eye. From the line of hills which skirt the river on the east, their side dotted with groves till our vision is almost lost among the farmhouses that cover the great prairie to the west.
In the early days, McKennan Park became a very central point in the city of Sioux Falls.
Besides the panoramic view, the park offered a perfect picnic grove of 7 acres of hardwood trees. A little lake added to the quaint quality of the park.
This is cutting-edge stuff because the park system is just getting developed.
Development for the park area got a boost in 1911 with the building of McKennan Hospital. Conveniently located on a newly built streetcar line, the hospital represented the latest in modern medicine for its time. 4 early doctors built their homes in the district.
It was perfect. They lived right by McKennan Park and right by their place of employment.
During the dedication ceremony on December 17, 1911, McKennan Hospital received its first emergency phone call. Dr. Gilbert Cottam performed the first surgery, an emergency appendectomy, that night.
McKennan Hospital was very important for Sioux Falls at the time, and not only did it bring residential growth to this area, but it just served as a catalyst for other economic development opportunities.
By 1915, further developments were made to the district. Streets were paved, wooden sidewalks were replaced by concrete, and streetcar service came to the area. Along with the firm establishment of McKennan Park and McKennan Hospital, a flurry of construction began in the district. During this time, the city started to maintain and beautify the boulevard on a yearly basis. Small trees, evergreens, spireas, and other annual flowers were planted in a wide center strip that extended from Phillips Avenue to 7th Avenue.
If you want to actually say that you are somebody in the McKennan Park District, you have a home that faces on the boulevard.
From 1915 through 1925, 40 of the 85 houses within the district were built. Influential businessmen and professionals began making their homes in the park area, often building large, elaborate, eclectic houses. The area was finally becoming a fashionable residence quarter of Sioux Falls, as it was billed 40 years earlier. The architectural styles of these houses were as diverse as the people who lived in them.
These people are doctors, they're lawyers, they're owner of businesses, insurance, loans, even grocery stores.
Bank President William Baker built this house on the boulevard in 1916, which is one of the finest examples of Tudor Revival architecture in the city. An early doctor, Thomas Billion, owned this Prairie School-style house at 521 Boulevard. Melvin Grigsby's son, Sue Grigsby, built this house on 2nd Avenue in 1928. He lived here until his death in 1976. In 1924, Delmar Lowe constructed this Mediterranean-style duplex on 4th Avenue. Lowe was a bank cashier. He lived in one side, his in-laws in the other. Henry Fenn, an ice cream maker, built this bungalow from plans inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright. He used his 2nd Avenue home as a summer residence. Burry Lean, mayor of Sioux Falls during the turn of the 20th century, lived in this Italianate house at 221 East 21st Street.
Originally, their front door was on 2nd Avenue. The side of their house faced on the boulevard, and they didn't necessarily want to be unfashionable. So they actually changed the front of their house, and they moved their front door from 2nd Avenue onto the boulevard. And even to this day, if you go to the house and you look at what used to be the front of the house originally, the hitching post is still on 2nd Avenue.
All this attention on the boulevard spurred improvements to the park.
The park actually became very important in showcasing innovative and new ideas for landscaping. It was home to the Roman sunken gardens at one time, children's fountains, rose gardens, and at one time it had over 20 flower beds. So it was a really beautiful and picturesque place for people to come and visit, specifically, the mothers and children that Mrs. McKennan wanted to come here. Over the years, it's been used for a variety of purposes. It actually housed the city's first baseball field, so that was kind of a big deal for Sioux Falls at the time. Originally, after the baseball park was put in, there was also a small zoo that was here for a short time.
The first permanent wading pool was built in 1929. For many children, it was their first introduction to swimming. In 1931, park employees built a miniature village and rock garden out of many unusual rocks.
There was this village with little houses and trees, and there was, even as I recall, a water wheel that turned. And then the most magical thing was through this ran an electric train. It wasn't always going, but there were certain times that it was turned on, and this train would weave in and out of the village and up and down the mountain. Oh, it was just so magnificent. And as a little child looking up at that, it was just the most magical thing that there was to see in the park.
Another facility was the band shell. Band concerts by the municipal band and other bands was a very popular activity.
Wars and conflict have played a large role in the expansion of the park. A Colorado spruce tree was planted in memory of all Civil War veterans. In 1914, as the United States entered World War I, the History Club planted an oak tree in the flower garden in memory of all those who had lost their lives in the war. In 1941, with war clouds again looming on the horizon, 2 pillars were constructed of stone, with each state's initials carved into the stone. The Chamber of Commerce named the Pillars of the Nation. And 2 years later, during the darkest days of World War II, the park received a replica of the Statue of Liberty. The statue was dedicated on Sunday evening, August 1st, 1943.
It was made out of wood, but soon became a very focal point during the war for servicemen to come to Sioux Falls. Many of these guys had their sweethearts with them, and it was lovely to walk through the park on a moonlit night and stand next to the Statue of Liberty.
McKennan Park stood as a witness of better times. Eventually, the park became a recreational center for families who lived in the area.
There were a lot of kids in our neighborhood. I think there was 50 under 18 when I was growing up, and a familiar cry in the neighborhood was, "Hey Mom, I'm going up to the park."
Learning how to, hit a ball and that was, you went to McKennan Park. To fly a kite, you went to McKennan Park. And to play tennis, you went to McKennan Park, and that's a large part of our city of Sioux Falls.
Kids took advantage of the wading pool, the fresh air, the swing sets, everything McKennan Park had. The horseshoe people started pitching horseshoes here. It was the park to go for family reunions. Many, many family reunions were held here. So it was a wonderful place to go to.
Unfortunately, vandalism became the plague of the park. and the little miniature village with its unusual rock garden had to be removed after it had been damaged. Greenhouses that had grown many of the flowers used in the park were also removed. The 1960s also saw the death of many fine old elm trees due to Dutch elm disease, and the district was severely impacted by the removal of many trees both on the boulevard and in the park. The sound of the chainsaw throughout the park and the city became a hopeless call of sorrow. Even Helen McKennan's home, which had stood as a landmark for the park and the city, was in disrepair, and officials said it would take too much money to fix it up. So, the old house was torn down by the city in February of 1961 for $790.
The idea of a lot of the historic preservation really hadn't come to Sioux Falls yet, and so rather than putting a lot of money into it, it was torn down, so there's been some loss.
Even though Mrs. McKennan's house is not here today, it was actually raised in 1961. People still remember that it was there. It's not so long ago that they don't remember the home, which kind of adds another nice sense of history to the place.
Just made everybody really sad when they tore that house down. It was really sad, because it was kind of a grand old thing.
There was a small lodge that Sherman himself had built that's been taken down. But in many cases, it still stays the same.
Over time, the people who called this district home came together with the city to reclaim their park. Trees were replanted, a modern wading pool was designed, and a new Statue of Liberty was erected. New lighted tennis courts were built, and the bandshell was restored. The remodeled sunken gardens have been a witness to many weddings.
The park constantly evolves, but it does stay the same. If you grew up in that neighborhood, you're going to still be able to go to McKennan Park, and you're going to still be able to have many of the same experiences that you had with a kid. And you can take your family there, and you can take your kids there, and you can have a lot of those same experiences. There's still a wading pool in the area. There are still tennis courts in the area. The horseshoe pits. If you want to play horseshoes, you can go over and you can still do that.
Today, the beautiful park remains true to Mrs. McKennan's desires. The park is a relaxing place with picnic facilities, flower gardens, and a playground.
There's a strong sense of pride and unity within this historic district and this neighborhood as a whole. The property owners have done a great job in maintaining not only their landscaping, but the historical significance of their homes. They take a great pride in McKennan Park and knowing that it's a historic place and that it signifies a lot of memories for a lot of people in Sioux Falls.
Well, in 1906, when Helen McKennan passed away, and we get the creation of McKennan Park, the boulevard is already a fashionable place to live. And I don't think that's changed today. Today, it is still a great place to live in our city. Homes are sought after that are on the boulevard and around the McKennan Park district. People want a great place to raise a family in this community. And many people want homes that have some historic character to them, that have a past, that have mature trees, that have a place where their family can go and have recreation and enjoy the outdoors. And I think it's interesting because that's exactly what Helen McKennan wanted when she gave this land to the city. And I think people are still enjoying that today.
I think for a lot of people, McKennan Park does have that flavor of being very old-fashioned and family, and I think the variety of houses that surround the park make it have a feel for all ages. And as a result, I think it became a park that everybody felt comfortable in, and it was kind of their park.
We've grown up, we've changed in many good ways, but we still have that sense of neighbors being important and knowing who your neighbors are and everybody, working together for the good of the community. I see McKennan Park as, exemplifying the ideals that we think are long gone, but they're not really.
It is the central park for the city of Sioux Falls, a place where you can see the leaves blow through the air, smell the fresh breezes of fall, enjoy sunshine, blue skies, and wonderful flower plantings. It's just a great all-American park. McKennan Park is a true piece of Americana right here in Sioux Falls.